suited for analytics. And it's better suited for analytics. So since it's better suited for analytics, what you have is you have your data being aggregated in what we call cubes. This is going out of what you're trying to do. You have aggregation here. Let me put it this way. Let's say you, I don't know if you have anyone that works in a bank here. You probably have, okay, don't let me use that example. Let's say something like an e-commerce store still. And then you are trying to know how many people purchased from you, something from you for the last 1 month. You're trying to find out the total number of people or the total amount they have used in that type of purchase up to the present time. You won't get a fully defined answer from here, but from your OLAP, you would get a fully defined answer because the data has been compressed, and then you have some types of computations that have been done on them. There are two key differences, more than two key differences. The first one is a live system, one is not a live system. The second one is OLAPs have they are better suited for analytics because they allow, before the data is pushed into them, you understand, data goes through a process. So you have this. It's not that it's doing addition, subtraction, but you have actions performed on it, like sum, like mean, average, rolling time series, and things like. You have them performed on it before it is stored. And data in an OLAP system is stored in a cube. It's basically just aggregated. So you can have data for 1 year being stored in a space that is smaller than it will be when you are comparing it size-wise as against an OLTP. You understand? So those are the key differences between just these two data stores. One is live, the other one is not live, and data is just periodically loaded. Now, this leads us to when we talk about for transactional workloads, you would notice that we talked about two things. We talked about that the fact that your order does not clash with my order, even though we are both ordering the same thing. And the reason why that is possible is because of the next thing we'll be talking about now, which is this. I don't know who worked on this now, which is this. You understand? Your transactional data, it has to follow all of this. It has to follow all of this. All of this. It has to follow all of it. Atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. It has to follow. These are strongly tied. And then we call them the acid test. So for systems that involve transactions, you have this being very key, very germane to it. For anything that involves transactions, you must have this. It must be able to satisfy these conditions. Now, I know for the past few weeks now, everybody has been complaining about their banks. Are you still with me, guys? Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Okay, yes. So everyone has been complaining about their banks, and some people would have had transactions that didn't go through, transactions that went through, and then they were not debited. And then some people must have seen miracle money in their accounts. You understand? With everything happening. Now, for transactional workloads, the ideal case is that none of that never happens. Now, you have the first one. When you say something is atomic or atomicity, we are saying that each transaction is treated as a single unit. Now, it either fails or completes. So if I'm transacting money to you or doing a transfer of money to you, there are two things that will happen. It's either the transfer I'm doing to you, it's either it succeeds. The money leaves my account and it gets to your account. That is one. Or the money never leaves my account. That is the other thing that should happen. It is wrong and it is against these rules when you have somebody transact or send money to someone, and then you have the person being debited. The person that is supposed to be credited does not see the money. And then the money disappears, grows wings and flies. That is not what should happen when you have transactional workload. This is what should happen. If I'm doing a transaction, I'm transferring money from you, from myself to you. As the money leaves my account, as I receive a debit alert, yes, it might take some time for you to receive a credit alert, but you should receive that credit alert. That money should not be lost in the transfer. It should not be lost in the transaction. 2, consistency. Transactions can only take the data in the database from one valid state to another. So if it is successful, it is successful. I cannot go from sending money to you, it being successful on my own end, and then it now fails. It's either successful or it fails. There is no in between. Now, for isolation now, when we talk about isolation, what we are talking about here is very simple. And what we're talking about here is just this. Concurrent execution of transactions leave the database in the same state. So take for instance now, if you are transferring money to maybe 2 or 3 people, there should not be anything that makes it possible that the money I'm transferring to Mr. B is the money Mr. A gets. It shouldn't be possible. Because each unit of your transaction is independent of each other. You understand? Each unit of your transaction. And I'm using this example because it's something you all would be used to and something you all might have experienced with the way banking is in Nigeria. But that's not the ideal state. But I hope you guys are understanding. I hope it's clear though. Are you with me?
Yes.
Have I lost anybody?
Yes, we are.
Okay. If there is any question, you guys can please ask. Okay, I'm trying to check the messages here. Okay, thank you very much. I think I would sort that maybe when we take a break. Okay, so now for durability, once a transaction has been committed, it remains committed. And what we mean by that is if this transaction is committed, if it is committed, if it is done, it is done. There are no 2 states to it. If I have sent money to you and you have received the money, then I have sent money to you and you have received the money, and that's all there is to it. There are no 2 things to it. You get? So I hope that's understood by everyone. Now, the next thing we want to look about is we have talked about transactional workloads and the acid test. You understand? That deals with all databases, but more importantly, it deals with transactional workloads. You understand? Because they need to pass this test. You understand? Now is analytical workloads. If you remember when we talked about OLAP, we talked about OLAP, and one of the things we mentioned when we're talking about it was that it had how do you put it? It had a way to process data before it gets into it. You understand? So, and that's the next thing we would be looking at now. So, when you look at OLAPs, your analytical workloads that are used for data analysis and decision making, and that is what you have here. Really, that's what you have here. I think. Sorry, guys. Let me stop sharing for a bit. See if I can clean this up and come back. Okay. I think we are good. Okay. So, analytical workloads are used for data analysis and decision making. And the reason they are used this way or they make so much sense is because they have undergone some certain level of transformation to make them what they are presently. So they are better suited for your data analysis work, and then you can use them for things just like they've written, like summaries, trends, business information, and things like that. And a good case or a good example for this would be to give you an example. If you for example, now let's do this. If you had a store, let's say this is your store, and then you had items in your store, just general items as the case may be. Now, the items in your store now, you wanted to know how many of these, let's say this is blue, this is red, and then let's say this is purple. I know the colors are not the colors, but just bear with me. Now, if you had so many of these items, so you can call this bread and gari, if it makes so much sense, let us call this bread and let us call this indomie. You understand? I think it's more relatable that way. So if you wanted to know how much bread you have in your store or how much indomie you have in your store, in a very large store, you can't take count of how much is left during the day when you're actually still selling. You understand? When you are still making transactions and you are selling and you're doing things like that, you can't do that. The only time you'll be able to get this type of information is, okay, at the close of the day, we want to know how much have we sold. Are you guys with me? We want to know how much have we sold. And then in an analytical workload, this is what usually happens. They are just systems that store vast volumes of categorical data or even business metrics. You understand? And the way it works oftentimes is this type of systems often take snapshots, you understand, of a timestamp. Just like, okay, this is the data this business has as at last month, and then all of that data, and then I want to probably now get additional data from the business in the next 2 days, or maybe every 12 hours or every 6 hours. And then I use that data for just processing. And you will find this type of workloads are the ones they use for things like strength, business information. You'd want to do monthly sales report. You want to do earnings report. And, a good example of this would be probably you want to run a payroll, but a payroll is not a great example. But you want to run a payroll, you run a payroll once in a month. You won't run a payroll twice in a month or 3 times in a month. So these are analytical workloads, and this is what they are best suited for. The next thing we'll be looking at is just your data. Mr. Kimbola, you're not supposed to be drawing on this screen. Okay. So now the next thing we'll be moving into is data processing. Now, data processing is when we move data from one place to another place. Hello, Mr. Kimbola.
Busayo, so what's happening is he doesn't even know he's doing this. It's a settings thing. I'll check it out tomorrow and then fix it. Please, pardon.
Okay, no problems.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Okay, so moving on. So data processing, the next thing we'll look at is data processing. And everything we've talked about so far has been okay. Our data, what our data is, the types of structures they might contain. We've talked about where those data are put, but we've not really talked about how do we put this data where they are being done, or what is the process that brings them to where they are. And that's the next thing we are talking about. And that is the process of, that's data processing, sort of. You understand? That's data processing. So, but data processing really is just you taking data from one phase, you understand, just from one state to another state. You understand? But in this case, you want to convert your data into information. You have your data, and your data, you are converting it from what it is into something that makes sense. To give you an example now, let's say there is, let me use a banking analogy. let's say you work in a bank and you have ATMs all around Lagos, so to say, and you are the one in charge of channel transactions. And one of the channels you are monitoring is ATMs. You understand? Now you would have, every time somebody makes a transaction via the ATM, you're going to have data because it's going to be logged. You know the time the transaction was done, the amount that was withdrawn, the type of card that was used. Probably if a picture was taken when that was done, you will see a picture that was taken. You will know the balance as a data. You have all of that data. But all of that data does not mean anything when you look at it. Now, but when that data goes through processing, that data begins to mean something. You can have the same data I've talked about now, and then you are not able to make head or tails out of it. And then you can have this data that I've talked about now and be able to say that, oh, I think that in ATM slots 5, 6, and 21, those are target ATMs. We are making more money from them. I think we should probably put maybe ₦1 million there or 10 million naira there at those ATM points on Fridays. Or maybe on the first Fridays of the month. And the reason you would know that is when you begin to look at the data. Now, you looking at the data is you are processing the data, and then you can find out that, oh, this ATM is very close to, okay, I am seeing people withdrawing large sums of money from this ATM. Why? This ATM is close to probably a spot where people maybe relax. It's close to the place where people club. And then you can know that, oh, it's on the 1st of December, we used to see this type of transactions. And then you know that when it's on the 31st or the 30th, I want to move money there in large quantity so that people will be able to withdraw, and then the charges I take from their card when they withdraw, it will revert back to my bank. Now, what we have done is we have information or we have data when people are withdrawing, but we have been able to convert data to meaningful information, and we have done that through data processing. Now, but really, there are so many types of processing, but in the context of what we are talking about two. Really, there is batch processing, and then there is stream processing. Now, when we say batch processing, what we mean really is your data is not processed immediately it gets into the system. Just for example now, the ATM slots we are describing, if each data, as each person does that transaction, I take that data and I'm trying to find information from that data, I'm not going to get anything that makes sense because it's just one single line. You understand? It's just one long line of data that I'm getting, and that's what I'm seeing. But if I look at that data, so to say, maybe after a day, and then let's say I've gotten like 500 or 300 transactions on that ATM, then I can begin to see something that looks like sense in it. You understand? So batch processing is when your data is you use it for typically large data sets, you understand, but the data is grouped and then is processed at once. Now, it being processed at once does not mean that it's the data for one whole year. It could mean that, okay, it's the data for maybe I want to do my data processing, I want to do it every 2 hours, every 1 hour, every 14 days, every 15 minutes. It depends. You understand? But the key thing about data processing is, okay, the data elements are collected into a group. Then the group is processed at a future time as a batch. That's where the name comes. So you have all the data, you have it all together, and then all of that data is processed at once. So you get your output at once. Now, for stream processing is different, and stream processing is used where you need real-time insight. There is just in time, and then there is real time, and then you find out that stream processing is used often and mostly where you have real-time systems. Maybe you have temperature monitoring systems, you have industrial controllers that rely on heat sensors. Anytime typically it's used to where you find IoTs or Internet of Things devices. And then you want to work on that data immediately it gets to you, because you getting that data is not the end of it. And then that data gives you just enough information for you to take an action immediately. You understand? Now, to give you an example of that, let's say you work in a lab and then you have a evac, that is HAVAC. And then the evac you have, you actually need your evac to maintain the temperature at maybe 15 degrees Celsius or 15 degrees Fahrenheit as the case. Let's say 15 degrees Celsius. You understand? You need it to be cold. So you have a temperature sensor that checks if the temperature goes a bit above that 15 degrees, and each time it goes a bit above that 15 degrees, you want to further reduce the temperature so that it is stable. So it's used for maybe time critical devices or things like that that require you necessarily to have that real-time insight into what is happening. So immediately each new piece of data comes in, you understand? It just processes it immediately. You get that result immediately, and it helps you take a certain decision. So I don't know, is there anything I've said so far that you guys do not understand presently, or you guys are lost? Because we have a knowledge check we want to go into right away. So if there is anything you guys do not understand, you can just raise your hands up and then I'll call you. I'm going to assume everybody understands so far. Are you
Sorry,
guys
I'm
with me?
looking for the emoji for hands up. I can't find it. I'm trying to. I have a
Okay, please,
question.
then you can ask your question. I think it's there
Oh, okay.
somewhere.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Please, I just want to ask: is it possible for a data to take both forms, like batch processing and also steam process at the same time? Is it possible? Can we have a data like that?
Well, I think it will depend on your use case. You understand? It depends on use case. There are data taking forms. I think the question is wrongly structured. Data can exist in, well, for the purpose of this class, in either of these three states, structured, semi-structured, and unstructured. That is the forms data can exist in, at least for this class. You understand? Now, when you talk about that data being processed in batch or stream, that's possible. You can process data any of the two ways. You can either process them in batch or stream, and then you can process data concurrently. But that will be false, because by the definition of batch processing, you understand, the data has to be collected and then later processed. And then by the definition of stream processing, immediately the data gets in, we process it. Now, but if we look at it on the reverse side, if you are saying, okay, I want to process data immediately it gets in. However, I want to take all the data I have gotten after a while and then probably try to glean some insight from it as a whole, then I think it still falls back to you saying you are doing batch and stream processing. But you will not do batch processing concurrently with your data. All the data has to be there before you do your batch processing. But for stream processing, immediately the data gets in, you are processing it. So I hope I answered your question correctly.
Yes,
Or
thank
you
you
have
very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry,
okay.
excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can share my thoughts on this. So looking at an example, like there is this roads in advanced country whereby you speed limits. If a road says you should drive just 30 kilometers per hour, and anyone that drives faster than that, there is the camera that captures the number plates to record that a particular driver or number of driver per time has done this. And automatically there is a feedback at the back end that charges that records the person as as an offender. Yeah. But at the end of the month, the traffic department may want to see how many people have, or probably they are trying to evaluate the risk of accidents on that road and see the level of compliance, how many people actually overspeed over the course of a month. So in this kind of example, will you consider that as a situation of having batch processing and stream processing situation?
Yes, because there are two things you have described also. You have said that immediately you cross the speed limit, you are issued a ticket. That's a real-time response to an action, and that is each piece of data is processed when it arrives. Now, on the flip side, we've said that at the end of the month, they want to know what happened. You understand? We are still going to get into that. And we're going to talk about what we call descriptive, prescriptive, and some types of analytics. So what they are doing is at the end of that month, they are now looking at the data and they are saying, okay, this data that you have gotten, everybody prior to that has been fined. If you live in a place like UK, thereabout, or you most likely have received your fine, you are thinking of where to get the extra money to pay your fine, or you have paid your fine. But at the end of the month, the data they have now, they are using it not for anything real time. They are using it for planning purpose. Now, to give you an example now of this, look at a place like Lagos and look at Lekki. And then and look at the sea. How the people have chased the sea, and the sea is chasing people, and every time it's the rainy season, people lose their cars, they lose their houses, and a lot of things happen. Now, if there was a sensor that was at that place that measured the height of water and then sends a signal to people in Lekki that, okay, the water is rising above this level, or people in Nigeria, that you need to leave your houses or evacuate. That will be stream processing. Because immediately the water has reached that level, they all get an alert. Now, but town planning will take all that data. You understand? Because they will not be getting that sensor. The sensor is not going to be in one place. The sensor is going to be in every place. And then all the data they've gotten now, they will now use it for planning purpose. Like, okay, this place has been flooded for so long, and then the next thing, the best thing for us to do is to probably open up these water canals that have been built over, so that we can allow water passage. So the data they have, they are working on it in a batch way. It's batch processing, but immediately the water is more than a certain level, people have been notified. So it's still exactly the same thing. So I hope I'm clear. I don't know if
that is good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we move forward and then we have a short test. We'll take a 5 minutes break and then we'll come back. Okay, so this is your test. Okay, how is data in a relational table organized? So who wants to try? I don't want to call people. So are there any takers?
Rows and columns.
Okay, Tolulokwe, you have raised your hands up. So Tolulokwe, you can talk, please. I think 2 people have raised their hands.
It's organized in rows and columns.
In rows and columns. Okay, we don't know if you are right or wrong, but we'll soon find out. And who wants to go for the other question now? Which of the following is an example of unstructured data? Holiness, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, for the second question, I think is audio and video files. They are examples of unstructured data.
Okay, that's great. And then who wants to go for the next one? Which of the following is an example of streaming data set? I think I see 3 people have raised up their hands. I'm trying to see your names. Okay, Holiness. If you've raised up your hand and I've called you, please, you can just remove your hand. Tell me, please, you can answer this question. Which of the following is an example of streaming data set? Oh, okay. Tim is not answering. Adiremi, you can answer, please.
Data from sensor feeds.
Data from sensor feeds. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody that participated.
I think data from sensor feeds.
Okay. Thank you, everyone that participated. You would know whether you are correct or not in the next few minutes. The winners of this quiz section, somebody is going to give you food, but I don't know who, so don't call my name. Okay, so let us check the answer here. Okay, so how is data stored in a relational table? It's organized in rows and columns. Which of the following is an example of unstructured data? Audio and video files. And which of the following is an example of a streaming data set? We have data from sensor feed. So I want you guys, I know you've been sitting for probably like 45 minutes or 55 minutes. Please just stretch your legs. In the next 5 minutes, we would jump back, or next 4 minutes actually, we'll jump back to class. Thank you. So drink a glass of water, stretch your legs, do some small exercise so that you take care of your back. Is very important. So we'll see you guys in 5 minutes time, or 3 minutes as the case may be.
Thank you.
3 minutes,
right,
we'll be back.
So you guys have 3 minutes. 3 minutes time, we are back in class.